Welcome to the Microcast, the short-form podcast from Microcosm Coaching, where we break down the science, strategy, and psychology behind smarter endurance training. Each week, we tackle a key concept in running, training, or recovery, and we give you practical tools you can apply right away, whether you're building back, leveling up, or chasing down a big goal. We keep it short, evidence-based, and grounded in real coaching experience. No hype, no fluff, just actionable insights to help you train sustainably and perform at your best. Let's get into it.
Over the next few weeks, we're going to introduce you to a few other Microcosm coaches on our podcast, so you can hear a little bit from them on who they are and what they're about.
I'm James Nance, a running and cycling coach based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. I used to teach college mathematics, and I absolutely loved connecting with all the students, forming those relationships, seeing them learn and grow. And I no longer teach, but I kind of missed that connection component. I really enjoy working with athletes who are maybe pursuing multiple sports or are pursuing a big goal in one sport, but still want to stay in touch with their other disciplines, whether that's cycling or skiing or swimming or whatever else. I really enjoy helping athletes balance chasing a big goal in one discipline while doing things that they still really enjoy and find valuable. I love coaching athletes of any age or chasing any discipline, whether that's a road 5K or a marathon, or a cyclist who just wants to show up and hang on a little longer during the group rides on the weekends, or whether they're training for some big endurance ride, a Grand Fondo or something like that. I really enjoy working with athletes who are maybe stuck in an injury cycle, athletes who are struggling or have struggled with relative energy deficiency in sport, Red S, maybe some disordered eating, maybe some exercise dependency. I've dealt with all that stuff myself and still struggle with it every now and then, so I feel like I can relate a little more easily to those athletes. I understand what they're going through. The problems I solve best are the ones where maybe someone's overtraining, and identifying how we can right the ship, ease off the gas a little bit, in a way that still feels like they're not going from 100 miles an hour to zero all at once. Trying to take one baby step each week or each month even, just to kind of like slowly taper things back. So if we can find one thing to tweak each week or each couple of weeks and just slowly work away, that seems to be a really impactful way to approach some of these problems. My hot take is that I don't enable any of the color coding of workouts in Training Peaks. I feel like seeing those colors, it assigns like bad to red and not good enough to yellow. And I really want to get away from that mindset, because sometimes taking a red day or skipping a workout could be you perfectly executing your training plan. If you didn't sleep well at all last night and stressing over, a big presentation at work, you're exhausted the next morning, instead of like slogging through a tough workout, you take the rest day. And that's exactly what I would want to see as a coach. What sets me apart as a coach is that I care really deeply about the athletes that I coach. They're not just a name in my Training Peaks log. I really want to get to know them as human beings. Like, what'd you do this weekend? How was that ski trip? You mentioned you had an interview for this job coming. How's that going? I miss those connections with my students as a teacher, and I'm kind of striving for those same connections with my athletes. Help multi-sport athletes chase big goals and dreams while staying in touch with their athletic identity, whether that's running and then going on that group ride on the weekends, or doing some downhill skiing on the weekends, or whatever else that they're able to do that expresses themselves as an athlete. I help them retain that in their athletic journey.
If you want to get to know Coach James or anyone else on our staff, reach out. We have roster spots available. microcosmcoaching@gmail.com.
What's up, everyone?
TJ just unbuttoned the top of his shirt, so that's the type of podcast we're settling in for today.
Just getting ready to have very long, eloquent, soapbox-like lectures here.
Locking in.
Locking in. Get that breathing.
Making sure your breathing is unobstructed. Should have worn a breathe right strip.
Okay, wow. You know what? I'm just going to go out and say it. There's a breathe right strip that you purchased.
Yes.
that is so strong. When I
Yeah.
tried to remove the one that I borrowed from you this morning, I think I almost took my entire nose off with it.
Well, you can keep it. I don't want it back. You can have that one. No, I got
They
these.
are gnarly.
And they're lavender scented, which love.
My
but
God.
they're like, I feel like I usually struggle. I feel like the lady at the Clinique counter growing up would have said I had an oily T-zone, and they don't make Breathe Right strips for us us oily T-zone girlies. So when I found these, I've been pretty pleased because I snore, which is a huge bummer because I feel like it comes into conflict with my self-concept as like a gorgeous young woman who also just saws logs at night. So
These are the type of Breathe Right strip that would not come off if you were racing in Thailand. They are
that's kind of what I've been
so
thinking.
strong.
Because they stick to me in the night.
Oh my God. I can't believe
Yeah.
I'm still just like
Thrown.
And I'm
Shook.
sure the audience is like, what are these guys talking about? And
Welcome to our 75-minute Breathe Right nasal strip review episode.
I had a few athletes reach out to me recently thanking me for being vulnerable about some of the stuff that I was going through ahead of canyons and I'm still navigating in my life. And they were, I guess, giving me feedback on my vulnerability.
Mhm.
And they mentioned that it's nice when you guys talk about yourselves and you get vulnerable. I hope this is what they were talking about.
Yeah. Right.
Breathe Right strips, snoring.
Family stuff like reproductive health and snoring. Yeah. That's what the people want.
I don't love talking about myself. And sometimes it feels a little weird or self-serving. So I hopefully athletes get something from those conversations more than just, I don't know, learning about me, a random person on the internet talking about running and endurance coaching, but actually there are takeaways there for people. That would be my goal. If there are not, please let me know.
It's also
not doing my job well.
To live a human life where like not everything you experience is a lesson for yourself and others, Yeah. Sometimes things just are, and that's okay too. But I did want to ask you some questions about your training because you are transitioning out of your canyons recovery. Safe to say you've recovered well. You're thriving.
Thriving.
With your Breathe Right strips. So what's next? Where are you at? What's going on?
No, I'm so excited because last summer I did well at Silver Rush, 50-mile race, Leadville, Colorado, and it got me an entry into
a gold coin.
Leadville 100.
We're going back.
So I get to try again.
Yay!
To try to maybe, if I'm lucky,
Why did you want to go back to this race in particular?
Well, unfinished business. Like I haven't put together a solid race over 50 miles ever.
Yeah.
I did okay at canyons.
Canyons solid.
But I didn't
not like a breakthrough.
Right. I wasn't in a position to like really compete at canyons. I was in a position to go and run and try to seek joy and have a healthy long day. And I got to accomplish a lot of those goals, which was really cool and provided some really good perspective that I get to take into Leadville. But hopefully I'll be healthy enough and there won't be so much life stress noise that I can go and like actually try to perform really well, which I tried to do the last time I was at Leadville. And if folks have been around long enough since like 2023, I'm sure we talked about it on a podcast episode, things were going very well until they were not.
Yeah.
And it was like a long last 15 miles.
Learned to fall in love with mashed potatoes.
Ugh.
And our friend Jonathan had to spoon feed you mashed potatoes.
That was actually Sean.
That was Sean. And I forget which of your adult male friends had to spoon baby food into your mouth.
Nobody spoon fed me mashed potatoes.
Like a baby.
But I love where this is digressed to.
Like an orphan sparrow. With like a little eyedropper.
It's funny what you guys remember and what I blocked out of my mind.
And I proposed to you.
Yeah, that was an interesting proposal.
Sure was.
Here we are. Years later.
Almost our 1-year anniversary.
Wow.
Still together, miraculously.
It is a miracle.
It is a miracle. It's really not.
So I'm excited for Leadville. I hope things, if things continue the way that they've been going.
Yeah.
I think I'll be able to like throw down,
Yeah.
and go for it.
Yeah.
Put myself out there and race hard.
Because for the better part of this year, you've been navigating some health stuff that's made training tough. It seems like you've sort of, I don't want to say come out on the other side, but the context is looking a little bit different and better. And the life stress context is looking different and better.
It is.
Is that encouraging?
Yeah, it is encouraging. I think I have learned a lot through this process that, and even though we did an entire podcast on this, and this is something that I specialize in as a coach, which is helping athletes manage training through significant life stress.
Yeah.
I still struggle with that sometimes for myself.
For sure.
Like making the proper adjustments. And like you make all of these small changes on a daily basis to try to stay in it.
Yeah.
And stay consistent. But it's really significant how much that impacts your ability to, one, be healthy. It like those issues with my dad's health, just other personal life stress really affected my ability to manage my own health.
Yeah.
And then the training, that's tough.
Yeah.
But staying in it, trying to make those small adjustments, I think where a lot of people get this wrong is they aren't patient enough.
Yes.
It doesn't work in 6 months.
Yeah.
So, then they quit. I've been managing this stuff for over a year and doing very small things all the time to get to where I am now, where I feel like I finally got over the hill.
Yeah.
And
you're one breathe right strip away from perfection.
And like there's excitement for the process returning and things like that help you build momentum to get back into your training in a bigger way. And something that I'm always reminded of is like, okay, as you get over that hill, the point isn't just to like add more stress on so you can get better at running. The point is to engage with the running in a meaningful way so you can live the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
So for me, that means doing the right amount of training that helps me get in a position to do well at Leadville, while also, remembering those things that I actually learned in this process, which was like, okay, it's much more about having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
what are those
enjoying
takeaways that you've learned that you think are helpful either for yourself or for other folks too?
I think that, it's easy to, when you pursue these things at a high level, it's super easy to just forget like joy has to come first.
Yeah.
Sustainability has to come first. And it's okay that training can look a different way for a while and try not to be in confrontation with that because it only creates more friction, which then gets in the way of you, creating meaningful progress. And I think the other thing that I've thought a lot about recently as I've been kind of like going through the Rolodex of like, oh, what things really worked? And this is really relevant to our podcast today.
Yeah.
It's like, are the things you're trying actually working?
Yes.
And how do you know?
How do you know?
You have to have reflection and time to go back and see, like, are these meaningful changes or, did I just throw a bunch of eggs at the wall and see which ones didn't break?
Yeah.
I think the point is in that process, you kind of really learn that the point was you had to go through that in order to change,
right?
In order to develop, I don't know, new parts of yourself, to become a better version of yourself in a way that just doesn't happen when life is good and you're chilling on the couch and everything is rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway. It's like I feel like I kind of got back to like, what's the main reason why I'm doing this? Oh, it's just because it's fun. Like, the whole point of it is fun.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to bringing that into my training. And I just did my first big week of Leadville training.
Yay!
It's like 12 and a half hours.
Hell yeah.
I haven't done a week like that in a really long time. I felt really good, really healthy. And who knows if that's going to continue because we're in the honeymoon stage, as we'll talk about, later on in the podcast. But I think it's a good place to build momentum from.
Yeah.
And it's a good opportunity to, continue to lead with, what's fun, what brings joy, what's sustainable. And then the results, what that you're trying to pursue and the things you're trying to achieve are downstream of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Hopefully I can sustain that process for a while.
I love
Hope that made sense.
Yeah. for sure.
So, before we move into the main body of today's conversation,
Yep.
I want to divert from me.
Yeah.
I want to ask you. So you've been navigating an Achilles flare-up injury.
Lefty has come for me again. Concho and lefty are my Achilles, and lefty is a real.
Concho is the right one?
Yeah, it's the right one.
And lefty is the
left one. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And
I like that.
lefty's a real diva and has been reactive.
Those
for
lefties are
weeks.
tough.
Yeah, and I mean, tendon injuries are so squirrely because it kept resolving within 24 hours, so that I would continue to run on it, like do long runs and stuff, and then I would have a setback. And so last week I finally accepted that I am like capital I injured.
Yeah.
And needed to rest, which is like not my favorite thing. I don't love cross training. I didn't become a runner to be a gravel biker. So I have been sort of navigating that, and it's an interesting reflection because it's the exact same Achilles that flared up when I was training for Western States like 3-4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that time was pretty rough, and I didn't have quite the mental resilience that I do now, because I do remember, having to take that time off for my Achilles then is what actually got me back into comedy.
Yeah.
Which is positive. Don't know that I'm like dying to keep learning that lesson or like have the universe continually, like, I think I have enough. Like, I'm doing too much now, universe. Like, I don't need to diversify. I have enough hobbies. Yeah, I'm good. So fully locked and loaded on the
you should write another book.
I need to write another
while you manage this injury.
No, I can only write one book at once. Well, it's not true, but it is true. And so that's been tough. And I think, dealing with the uncertainty, I theoretically have a race on my calendar, and it's a real coin flip on whether or not that's going to happen. I'm at the phase where it's just genuinely, there's not enough information to say. Either way, it's Schrodinger's ultrasign up credit at this point.
What do you do in a situation like this? I think this can be helpful for athletes to hear. How do you manage that uncertainty, that ambiguity? The race is in 1 month.
Yeah. Well, I know that I'm not going to be building fitness between now and then. I have let that fantasy go. There's not enough time to both heal a tendon and get fit. So
and that feels like a very healthy and smart arrival point in the process.
Yeah, I'm at peace with that. I know how long these things take. Yeah. I had a great winter of training, so that's positive. But even if I didn't, like, physiology doesn't care about my feelings, so I'm gonna just follow the physiology on this and not try to, like, do something like panic and try to cram training in. Like, my best bet on getting to the start line is getting there healthy. The fitness is what it is. I'm able to do some cross training on the bike, and I'm doing like an hour of running right now, which is not zero running. It's not enough for an elite athlete to build fitness.
No.
But again, like, I've just, I'm not going to be like, there's just no world where that's happening. So I'm not comparing what I'm doing to what I would do in this like fantasy world where I heal and build fitness. So now I'm focused on the healing, and tendon injuries are tough. I'm taking it day by day because that's kind of the time scale these things happen on.
Yeah.
You have to play by your tendons rules. So I have not honestly been thinking about the race that much. I've been pretty myopic, just like, all right, what do I need to do today to get a little bit better at this thing and take care of it?
So you're kind of going with, when athletes sometimes are going through a challenging moment, we say, hey, you know what, you need to zoom out. You need to look at the bigger picture. But in this situation, it's actually the opposite.
I'm zooming way in.
method. Like, how do I feel today?
Yeah.
And what can I do today to help with my recovery and to build my tendon health back up between now and race day?
Because my number one goal is health. And again, like, real 50-50 on if that means I get to race in June or not. And I'm not going to do anything. I'm pretty risk adverse when it comes to tendon injuries.
So you're not biking with the heat suit on?
Not biking with a heat suit on.
Probably a good thing.
I do love biking, and I love that I get to wear cute floral outfits and bike around. So there is an upside to this.
That's fun and normal behavior.
I love outfits. Good. My bike is this will surprise absolutely no one, is a sparkly lavender steel frame bicycle, which I took to some really inappropriate places this weekend in Crested Butte. Shout out to our athlete Bijo. And so there is fun to be had, but I'm just day by day. Like, that's the only way to do it. I don't know what I'll be able to do tomorrow. I know what I'm going to try, and then I'm going to listen to feedback and adapt. So I just think of every day like a decision tree of like, can it tolerate this load? If no, default to lower. If yes, increase by a small amount.
Yeah.
Rinse and repeat. That is all that there is to do, is to sort of use it as an opportunity to continue to gather data. I think what is positive is I have been a lot more conservative than I was the first time I had this injury. I was definitely running on it longer than I should have because I kept being like, oh, it's loosening up, it's fine. And this time, because I know a little bit more about like what level of discomfort means you need to pull the plug, pulled the plug sooner. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that.
And you should. I think it sucks that we have to celebrate progress through challenging moments
when
sometimes.
Like the bar is, you're not a fucking idiot. Like,
but seriously,
subterranean
listen,
bar.
We're preaching to the choir out there.
Yes.
We're all running, we're doing endurance events, whether it's a 5K or a 100-mile race. There's something, a little off with each and every one of us that we
it's beautiful, TJ.
choose to do these things with our free time.
Yep.
So give yourself a hand when you make really smart decisions with your health. It's not easy to do.
It is not.
Coming from somebody who struggles with that is just as much as anybody else.
Yeah. So that's growth. And I mean, I haven't had an injury in a while, so I'm grateful that I've been training so healthfully. I've learned I think that there were some inappropriate footwear choices. And I mean, it had sort of been, I had sensed instability in this tendon since like during my Chianti build, and it just didn't flare in that build. So, I've been doing pretty high volume training. It's not going to hurt my body to get like a full factory reset. It's not what I want. It's not what I would prefer to do, but also my preferences aren't really taken into account by the universe, it turns out, unfortunately.
And again, another good segue into, is that thing you tried actually working?
But before we get into the meat of it, I did want to sort of throw out there that we're having an open house for people who are potentially interested in coaching. So if you're someone who's like, oh, I listened to the podcast, I don't know that like coaching is for me, or that coaching with you two loons is for me.
You crazy.
Fair, valid. We're having an open house where you can meet and talk to other coaches. It's going to be a virtual open house. You don't need to move to rural Colorado to attend. The sign-up link is going to be in the show notes. It's June 11th at 5:30. And come meet our other coaches, ask questions, just get a vibe for what we're about with no commitment. It's not going to feel like a used car salesman situation. Just come and see, drop in, drop out. If you've listened to 18 minutes of us talking about running, chances are you won't hate this either.
Yeah, you'll love it.
So today we are going to talk about how to not kid yourself in training. And this is based on an article I had just published in Ultra Sign Up, because right now we're living in this time where there is just so much information available about training, fueling, recovery, and it's really hard to know how much of it applies to any one person. I think that like social media, my Reddit feed, like all of these things are just awash in these different workout configurations, carb targets, bicarb, ketones, a $30 athletic greens, Norwegian greens.
Oh, those Norwegian greens
cold
are the
plunges.
best.
You love your Norwegian greens.
My Norwegian cold plunge is also phenomenal.
So I think a lot of like what we see is like, we'll see an athlete who reads one study and decides they need to start doing double threshold sessions, or they hear a podcast and then suddenly they need to chase 140 grams of carbohydrates an hour. They need to mimic some random Swedish pro's morning routine. And by Tuesday, they've invested in creatine, a heat vest, ketone shots, and a shoe with more carbon than the entire Tour de France. So taking into account all of this training interventions, supplements, gear interventions, some amount of self-experimentation is necessary.
Absolutely.
Right? Like
100%.
there is not a specific study on like the best threshold intervention for TJ Davids at altitude. So like there's some stuff that needs to be found out, but I think it's really hard to tell when something is working and when you might be falling into one of several sort of cognitive traps that might lead you to believe something is working. So this is sort of one of our meta episodes about how to more intelligently consume science and be a critical thinker, rather than like, here's a protocol for you to copy and paste. This is like, well, no protocol, but we want to give you some frameworks so that you can self-coach more intelligently and you can navigate the really noisy information system that's out there more intelligently.
And the point of this is that, being able to check yourself and understand what's actually working for you and what's not is an important learnable skill.
Yes.
It's really vital. I mean, you wouldn't be where you are managing your Achilles injury had you not developed these skills over time through a lot of hard, challenging situations. And honestly, the same for me.
Yeah.
And so, we get to kind of, roll back, the cover over some of these things and talk a little bit more frankly about, what it really means to actually, pursue meaningful interventions and understand if they really work for you. I do think that it's important to talk a little bit about the framework and set this up for the listeners.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is an N of 1. So in medicine, a single subject is called an N of 1. Sample size is N. And if it's just you, you are the sample size of 1.
You are the one.
Which is a real respected evidence-based design, also called a case study. And the broad consensus is that it can genuinely tell you whether something works for you specifically, which is the thing that you care about. So the catch here is that it's really hard to isolate variables in a human life. So I think that we want to sort of bring some frameworks from science, because we're the sort of credible end of the field of exercise physiology and science communication lands. Rigor isn't a nice to have. It's kind of the primary objective here.
Absolutely.
So to quote one of my favorite writers, Feynman, is the first principle is you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool, which I love because it reminds me to approach all of these things with more humility than I might as a millennial podcaster might otherwise approach. So we're going to talk a little bit about how our individual brains can sabotage experiments, but I did want to sort of get into the meta of why are things so noisy and why is it so difficult to tell what is actually working?
So I think it's important to understand, why we're in a society of silver bullets and hacks right now is these things spread like wildfire, and they're very easy to spread because we have the applications to spread these things, whether it's social media or YouTube or podcasts. There are these mediums for getting information out there. And then there are specific, individuals who have a lot of clout based on, their status. That then these things become reputable in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. So I think, the obvious answer for why a hack is suddenly everywhere is because of this. And that someone is profiting from these things somewhere. And whenever there's money involved, we know that these things are, not necessarily put out in the world to produce a certain outcome within a certain individual, but their purpose is to produce profits.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this entire information ecosystem that we exist in, the attention economy, is a machine that is just hell bent on amplifying people that sound confident and things that sound shiny and
100%.
new. And a lot of it is fed by people who I would say are true believers. They're not setting out to be I want to grift someone today. Most of them are not intentional grifters. They're just downstream a lot of the cognitive biases that we're going to talk about. But on the level of the attention economy, just the way that social media and modern online clickable content news works is that it rewards things that are shareable and emotional rather than true. This one weird trick changed my running. That's going to get a lot of clicks. A reel that's it depends on 97 variables and you need to train consistently for a decade.
Right.
Not going to get a ton of clicks.
It's tough. And to be fair and honest here, we sell our coaching through this podcast.
We do.
And it's not a super sexy buy to ask somebody to think about doing something for 10 years and then you'll actually start to realize your potential. And but that's the truth,
Yes.
So again, a lot of this stuff does start with, the individuals kind of behind the product who are advocating for these products. And some of them, genuinely like those products.
Yeah.
Other people are performing a job because they're getting paid to promote those products.
Yeah.
And I think it does create a lot of noise for just the average consumer, the average athlete who's out there trying to figure things out and get a little bit better.
Yeah, because I think the most persuasive promoters of this isn't the guy that reads like a used car salesman. It's the true believers.
Right.
Because someone will genuinely fool themselves, have a real subjective experience of improvement, and might sincerely want to help other people. So they sort of start to evangelize with total conviction and no ill will, and the person who initially fell for the hack becomes like the sort of like patient zero that spreads it, and their sincerity, their real belief is exactly what makes it so compelling and contagious. So we all trust the buddy who swears by it far more than any ad. People are pretty intelligent. Like, we know that when someone is reading an ad to us, we get skeptical. When it's someone we look up to, someone we admire, someone we feel close to, a lot of those skepticism defenses start to come down. So the spread mechanism is just personal bias networked.
I want to mention the survivorship bias because I think this is huge too for people to hear about. And this is that you only ever hear from the winners. So the runner who tried the thing, felt nothing, struggled, and quietly moved on to other interventions, doesn't have some kind of like triumphant story to tell about that product. So you don't really hear from them.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, when people do pick up a new intervention and then they have a big result and they attribute it to that thing, that spreads a story that is contagious, that people want to hear about, and they love that. And so then it's everywhere.
And it doesn't make it like we all fall for this. Again, you must not fool yourself. We are wired. We have evolved to imitate people who are fast, and these hacks essentially benefit from their halos because prestige bias is a totally real and well-documented thing. We're born and evolved to imitate high status, successful people. So these protocols are borrowing credibility through association. If this pro does it, this pro is fast. Therefore, the protocol must be why this person is pro. The part where the pro would probably be fast regardless kind of fades into the background of a lot of this.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff is like the meaningful interventions tend to be a lot of times these things that are sold, like complicated heat training regimens, complicated workouts, complicated whatever, those things and coupled with cost start to almost sound like efficacy, whereas things that are boring and free, like sleep enough, do your training consistently, eat well, does not. So a precise, expensive, like really hard to execute bespoke protocol will just feel to people more real than sleep, eat, run. And a lot of times, like, again, we're just hardwired to mistake difficulty and price tag for potency. A lot of the studies of foam rollers, they have found, again, there's no mechanism that would explain feeling better, but people who use things like foam rollers or get sports massage, because those things are so uncomfortable, the discomfort actually makes people more likely to believe that the intervention works. Because when something is bad, you would feel like a moron for being like, I did this thing that is ineffective and felt shitty. You have a psychological immune system that when you feed that information through it, it's just going to come out the other end. This thing felt bad, therefore it must be good and effective because I spent a ton of money on it and it hurt.
Well, and there's also...
Which is why ultras exist, I think.
Right, for sure. And the complexity bias of like, wow, this thing is complicated and it comes with a complicated package story makes it feel more true. And the thing is, there's usually a kernel of truth in there. It doesn't usually start with something that's totally false, but then it grows into something that is oversized or overstated, and that becomes an issue because then we expect that when we do it we get this outsized benefit, and that's pretty much how nothing works.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, the upshot here is that when something feels universal and obvious and like everyone's already doing it, that's evidence that it's good at spreading, not evidence that it works. Or just because people have done it for a long time, Appeal to tradition, also not proof of efficacy. The burden of proof always needs to come back to you. So that's our preface.
All
now
right.
let's get into the 6 ways that your brain can make doing this hard. I'm so excited. I love this.
Okay. So number 1, regression to the mean.
Ooh, I see this. This is often, honestly, I feel like this is like job security for us, because this is regression to the mean is often what causes people to reach out about coaching.
Yeah, all the time. So the setup here, you bonk spectacularly at a 50K. You're rattled. And so that you overhaul everything.
All of it's got to go.
New training block, new supplement routine, new fueling plan. And then your next race goes great. And you're stoked, and you're so pumped. Like, I'm such a genius. I overhauled everything and I got it right.
Yep.
And you got the belt buckle, you've got the $500 bill from the feed, and like, it just, everything lines up perfectly. But then there's the reality.
Yeah, you just got to acknowledge that one bad race isn't a data point. It's not like a referendum on your fitness. Maybe it was hot that day. Maybe your pacing was bad. You slept poorly, or you effed around and found out about aid station watermelon for the first time in your life. Don't do that. You're going to run better next time, almost no matter what you change, because the disaster was the outlier, not the new normal. So the science here is, and this is a well-established statistical phenomenon that we see in health and fitness a lot, is that your real fitness sits at some average, and any given race will land above or below it, depending on how that day shakes out. Heat, sleep, pacing, melon intake, and a big bonk that is averaged buried under a one-off pile of bad luck, and bad luck that deep is usually not going to happen the same way twice. So your next race is more likely to drift back towards that mean on its own, regardless of whatever interventions you threw at it. Maybe it was the new gel. Maybe you had nowhere to go but up.
I think our ultra runners hate hearing this.
Yeah.
Because we race so we race infrequently.
Yeah.
Compared to our 5K, 10K, half, and even marathon runners who are like, yeah, sometimes you have an off day and then you train for another 3 months and you do another marathon, and it all comes out in the wash. But we know ultra runners tend to really overemphasize those days that go bad.
Yeah.
And they don't look at it in the context of all of their other races to see kind of where the actual median is.
Yeah.
And then that leads to, a lot of like false assumptions about your fitness, the training that you've done going into that race. I mean, all sorts of things there. But the trap is really real, I think, particularly in ultra.
And I think we can see it on a smaller scale too. Like, let's say an athlete starts magnesium during the worst week they've had all year, where they're like cramping, they're sleeping like trash, and things start to improve. Obviously, magnesium's the hero, right? Right? But you reach for that magnesium exactly because things had already gotten bad, which is when they tend to improve on their own. So that's regression to the mean.
Love it. All right. Number 2, the shiny new toy effect.
So this is placebo, but what it is, and it doesn't mean fake. I think a lot of times people think that it's fake, but what's important to acknowledge is that belief is a real measurable force. And in sports, it works by changing how hard you're willing to go, how you execute. This is well supported. Expectation will reliably shift your effort and output. Like, let's say you lace up super shoes, or you chug a ketone shot with a $30 price tag, and suddenly you feel like a real athlete on a mission. You are bicarbed to the gills.
Go.
In your workout, you push much harder. And maybe the gear or the bicarb gel gets to take credit for the performance. I also want to acknowledge that, like, a lot of you must not fool yourself. So if you're sitting here thinking like, no, I'm smart enough to not fall for placebo, I would never. Remember that we have randomized controlled trials for a reason, and double-blinded trials where even the researchers themselves don't know who's getting the intervention. So if like the guys in lab coats need to have this information concealed from them, Joe whoever listening to the microcast, you can be forgiven if you also struggle to recognize when something is placebo. And this is how a lot, like, honestly, this is like what sells supplements. There's literally 5 supplements backed by science. Think about, like, if people got this right, the whole, like, GMCs wouldn't exist, Whole Foods would be so much smaller. 5 supplements backed by science.
Just imagine just going in and you just only had your 5 supplements.
It's like a giant rule, and it's like a giant GMC, and it's just like caffeine, beta alanine, sodium bicarbonate, and what's the other one? I can't remember. The next one is nitrates. Yeah. So spoiler alert, those are the 5.
No, I think that's like, it's so funny to think about that because, yeah, sometimes those things can meaningfully help, but the question isn't whether they work. It's just how big of an edge they actually give the particular individual who's using the product.
Right. Do you need to chug sodium bicarbonate, or do you just need to do your freaking threshold workout?
It's a good question. I'd be, I don't want to, no spoilers here, but it's probably the threshold workouts.
All right. The next cognitive bias we see is recall and confirmation bias. I love this one as well.
So the way to think about this is you remember the workout where you felt like a demigod on, on your new plan, and the morning you woke up convinced the creatine was working. Like, you remember these moments, these real highs.
Or like whenever we start with an athlete and they're like 4 days in, they're like, I feel better already. And it's like, I would love to take credit for this, but unfortunately, your mitochondria have no idea that I exist yet.
No.
They will. We will get there. We will get to your mitochondria, but not yet.
But not on day 4.
Not on day 4.
Sometimes what's harder for athletes to remember is like the 3 sessions where they felt flat or they didn't feel that great, and that's tough. Like, these really strong workouts always stick out.
Yeah.
And sometimes they give us kind of a highlight reel sensation of like where we're at. And that can make it difficult to manage some of the realities around training.
Confirmation bias is everywhere when you know what to look for.
Right. It really is, honestly.
Like, maybe you're like, oh, you go have a great run. You're like, oh my God, that like one hot tub session made me a totally different athlete, but you don't know that was the variable, and you just might have happened to feel amazing. So this is why I think it's so important to keep a training log. And this is why I have all my athletes specifically like do this with fueling, because I think this is one of the things that can make it hard to like find patterns in fueling, because the things that are sticky for people are the things that have like mega consequences, like when you have like a spectacular like near medical bonk or you feel amazing. And anytime emotions get involved, that makes sorting out efficacy even harder. So keeping a more neutral, like a training log, if you're doing heat training, if you're doing any intervention, like work intervals, strides, like whatever it is, you want to know when those things started. If you're doing heat training, if you started to strength train, whatever it is, because your memory is just inherently going to want the new thing to have worked. That is what it is going to focus on. Whereas your training log will not care. So it's good to have that sort of like neutral outlet. And I think that
you need an outside eye.
You do.
To try to help gut check that, give you that sanity check of like, it was the one run that you did at altitude that totally made you feel better. Like,
like I'll have an athlete be like, I had nootropics and then I PR'd this one climb. And I'm like, great. Let's hold this lightly.
All right. Number 4, the novelty effect.
Oh man, this is mega again with the people who are like, I'm 5 days into my training plan and I'm transformed.
No, this is the best. And we've all felt this before. Like, I remember when I first, two summers ago, I first started working with my new coach.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is amazing. You're in that honeymoon stage and it's just like, I love these new interventions. And then like 18 months later, I'm like, oh my God, this is so fucking hard.
One more fucking long run.
If I have to do 4 long runs a week for the rest of my life,
I hate ultra running.
I'm gonna explode. So the first 2 weeks of any new block, supplement, diet, protocol always feel good. We have this, and that's the trap, right? We have this novelty effect, the honeymoon phase. You're fresh, motivated. Fatigue is usually low, especially if you're, coming into your training block and you've done your training correctly. things are easing, sleep recovery maybe are better in these moments. And so that's, it's complicated as to why you're actually feeling good. And we tend to associate those positive feelings with the new intervention when there are often a lot of other things that kind of are in the environment that are helping to produce those sensations.
Yeah, a lot of times the magic early on is mostly just that you're motivated and you're being intentional. And you're motivated to find a reason that whatever you've tried is definitely working. Like our brains are just wired to do this. So, I mean, also it must be mentioned, like as much as I'd love to praise myself for being like a uniquely gifted coach, if you throw structured training at any sub-elite athlete, they're going to get better.
Totally.
Like it doesn't have to be totally fancy, overthought, overwrought training stimulus. Like structured training will make you better without overthinking it. And then by the time week 3 rolls in, there's a little more fatigue. The novelty's wearing out. You're getting tired of tracking of like counting your macros or of eating keto or having 30 grams of protein at every meal or whatever. And then, it stops being sexy and you start to think that maybe the cold plunge or the paleo diet or eating like an entire warthog's worth of carbohydrates on every single run might not have been the magic intervention.
Right.
Or maybe it was just because you started paying attention to what you ate. You started paying attention to what you drank. You started paying attention to how much you were sleeping.
I think one of the challenges here is this kind of thing causes athletes to quit whatever the intervention is before it's actually had the time to work.
Yeah.
So then they never really realize the actual benefits of whatever new novel approach that they're taking, like the potential of that thing.
I'll have an athlete do strength training for like 2 weeks and they're like, I'm not faster. It's like, yeah, I bet you're not.
That's not how that works.
It's not how anything works. And again, like our brains are just wired this way. We evolved to over-index on the shiny new thing that used to help us survive. It's a great adaptation for when we were like chilling on the savannah, and it's a poor adaptation for humans that live in a world with GMCs. So it's bad for anyone who's trying to like be honest about whether some new intervention like really moved the needle in their training, or maybe it's something more boring and simple that they'd been training consistently for a few months. And I would say 99% of the time it's the boring thing.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk about this one. Number 5, other people are not you.
I don't get it. Explain.
This is huge. I see this a lot with a lot of the male athletes that I work with. We can also think about these as comparison traps. For example, like, okay, pros do double threshold. They take bicarb. They do 120 grams of carbs an hour. Sleep 9 hours a night.
Incredible.
And they do all that and they're pros, right? So it must all work.
They're experts.
Yeah, they are absolutely experts in themselves, but maybe not these protocols. So the pro is fast because of genetics. They are fast.
The best intervention would be telling your dad to mate with a faster lady.
Yeah,
unfortunately, that like if we could hack, like if we could get a microcosm genetic time machine going, done. I mean, we would put ourselves
just
out
all
of a
go
job.
back and just have different dads,
yeah,
and moms,
and all different. Timeline would get very confusing.
It would be weird. But we'd have the
if
genetics.
we all back to futured ourselves and ended up accidentally hitting on our moms in the 80s.
Oh, God.
Not good.
Oh, that would be strange.
That would not be good.
That wouldn't be good.
I guess getting hit on by your mom.
That'd be fucked up.
That's what happens in Back to the Future.
It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
It's deeply upsetting when you actually start to think about the implications of your mom trying to come on to you.
Some of these movies, I'm digressing.
They've not aged well. Yeah. Not good.
So the pros are fast because of genetics. And then
step 1, better genes.
Step 1, better genes. Step
Athletic
2,
greens does not change your genome.
Step 2, they haven't gotten to the greens yet. So they're still on step 2. They're accumulating decades of training.
Ooh, decades of training. Also good.
Then they have full-time recovery abilities.
Yep.
They've got a physio on speed dial, a mental performance coach. They've got a running coach. They've got a nutritionist. And, then like shoe companies pay them to take naps, basically.
Yeah.
these are real jobs. They're performing
It's a
labor.
good gig
They
if you
work
can
really
get it.
hard.
Yes.
But like their situation is totally different than mine or yours or the athletes that are listening to this podcast. And so it's incredibly ridiculous to look at what they do and make assumptions around what they do that would work for you.
This is the thing that makes it
absolutely
work.
like, I mean, if you try to copy those interventions without any of the context, you're copying the garnish and skipping the meal.
Yeah.
Like, it's great. Like, I've got a little bit of cilantro
I'm gonna
top.
sprinkle some fancy pink Himalayan sea salt on my shit burger that I have going.
Yeah.
My little bicarb salt mix.
Well, and then we wonder, why we get hurt or we're not getting better, because these things really aren't meant for the context that we have coming into this.
And a lot of times pro athletes can be experts of their own body, but like famously, a lot of these people are not from fucking Mensa. Like Tom Brady does all kinds of insane shit. He believes if you drink a gallon of water, you don't need sunscreen. Novak Djokovic believes you can heal things with like sound waves and is like a full like anti-vax lunatic. And like Michael Phelps does cupping despite the fact that cupping is not well supported by the evidence. Like people who are the best in the world make bad calls on bad science. So they're not researchers. They're getting their freak on in their free time, and I applaud them, but that doesn't mean that you need to do it as well. So I think the right question to ask isn't like, well, does Jim Walmsley do this? Can I do it too? The right question is, does this work for elite Norwegians that have like a live-in masseur, ample tax write-offs for all the time that they spend foam rolling and they're like on Hoka's payroll? I think the right question to ask is, does this work for me on the runnable time that I have every week with my job, my sleep, my family, my training history?
Yeah.
And again, almost every single time, the answer is not going to be to buy the expensive supplement to copy the exact workout.
Totally, 100%. Number 6, sunk cost.
Yep.
So I love this because it's so critical to understand in the context of the environment in which we're trying to, realize our athletic potential. There is so much in the market space. We're getting sold products left and right.
And
hacks,
our attention is being bought and sold.
100%. So tell us a little bit about these sunk costs.
Yeah. So this is the idea that if you invest a lot of time and money into a thing, your psychological immune system is going to try really hard to feel that it's beneficial.
Yep.
And again, this isn't you like intentionally lying to yourself. This is how things work. And it's not just about money, right? Sunk cost fallacy a lot of times can be economic, but it can be about time, because like a 12-week training block is a really big part of your season.
It's a huge investment.
Admitting that you maybe didn't spend it very well means admitting you torched it. So like the behavioral economics of this all is, the more that an intervention costs you in dollars and months and suffering, if something is really uncomfortable. This is actually one of the reasons ultra marathons are likely so sticky, is because when you have a painful like physically and mentally painful experience, your brain will retrofit it with meaning. Because it's obviously like, it's real dumb to suffer for. It's a defense mechanism. It's like what we have to make meaning of things that are not type 1 fun. So the worse off, the like more uncomfortable, painful, expensive this thing is, the louder your brain is going to try to defend it, because you are built to retrofit it into meaning. No one thinks that they're a sucker, right? Like no one thinks that like, I'm going to get fooled today. So every intervention gets fed through that psychological immune system and comes out the other side with like 2 thumbs up.
All right. I want to change up the conversation a little bit and talk a little bit about how athletes can actually test something to see if it's working. And I think one honest caveat first is some of this you can test cleanly, and some of it you can't.
You can't test everything.
Like this is why entire industries exists. And that tension is something that is sometimes taken advantage of by, certain companies in the space. And that's, I think, a normal part of this. It's not always easy to find the signal in the noise.
Or even possible, because training is really hard to test, right? Like so often when we talk about like exercise physiology studies on this podcast, we're talking about the small sample sizes and the difficulty. And one of the sort of hinges in that is that fitness is cumulative, and different systems and stimuli adapt on really different timelines. Well, you can stop taking a supplement, right? You can untake magnesium. You can't undo a threshold block.
No.
That is part of you now.
Yeah.
So you can't uncheck whether that effect reverses, and time is always a variable in training.
So
time is an intervention.
With time in mind, the first thing I like athletes to think about is change one thing at a time.
This is big with nutrition. When someone has like a bad bonk or like gets really sick during a race, I feel like they're always like, I want to change all the stuff.
Right.
And it's
overhaul.
Like, maybe it was the fact that you like ate 3 Capri Suns at mile 20, and we don't need to like revisit everything from a clean slate.
Seriously, no. And that, again, it creates noise because we don't actually know what helped change the outcome. So if you add heat training, double days, creatine, all of that in the same block, you'll just never know.
Yeah.
You're never going to know what actually helped make meaningful change.
Yeah.
So change one thing, if you pick one of those. Okay, I'm going to do heat training to prepare for my race this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see how that works.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a level and sweat test and do, I'm going to drink according to my, needs based on a test. Okay, that's one meaningful intervention.
Yeah.
Stick to one thing at a time.
The second piece of advice I would give is decide what success looks like before you start, and don't make it a race. Races are too emotional. It's a really noisy data point.
Yeah. Like, what does working mean for you?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things you need to define what this looks like. If you're going to do a threshold block, this one's easy. Define like my threshold. I want it to improve by 2% or more over this time period. Great. Now you have something to test against. That's a pretty reasonable expectation. I mean, if you're a more advanced athlete.
Depends on where you're at in the process.
No. Right. Decide what that means. If you start taking creatine, if you don't decide what success means ahead of time, your brain might start to interpret, I don't know, I don't feel worse as success, when that is unequivocally not success, not feeling worse. Like, I really hate there's no harm in taking a thing, because I think that things should have to work is this like weird belief I have. If I want to spend money on a thing, I want it to work. Because like if I go to Wendy's right now and I spend money on a burger, shit's going to work, So like if you can't beat a Wendy's burger in terms of efficacy, bad supplement.
Seriously, right? And you can write down the result
Yeah.
that would convince you in advance
Yes.
that this thing's been successful before you've even started.
Yeah.
So you have a strong funnel for success to really like gauge things through.
Yeah. Like, I mean, scientists have to do this when they run experiments. You can't just like run the shit and be like, yeah, it looks like it worked. You have to have a hypothesis and then decide what your threshold for like, did it meet the conditions of the hypothesis or null,
Yeah.
And so make sure you're doing that in your own N of 1 experiment, because if you don't, I feel like we see this all the time. You just start accumulating all of this random noise. And then I have literally had coaching clients come to me, they're on like 30 plus supplements. And it's like, oh girl, your kidneys.
So next one here, number 3, know your noise and control your conditions.
Yep.
Everything has its own variables attached to it, whether that's heat training, terrain, sleep, fatigue, your eating habits, what's going on in your family life, your environment. And
if you're a menstruating athlete, can change things to an extent.
Everything has.
Also, you're aging, just to make things even better.
Yeah, totally. As we say sometimes, is everything has a wobble to it. And that means that we have to understand the context, I think, of these things.
Yes, this is one of the reasons where I am not a fan of the athlete that's like, I was slower on this climb than I was on the same day last year. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of variables we haven't controlled for. We've intentionally built more fatigue. Like, we did not prepare you to do this fitness test, which is like when we do threshold tests with clients, why they need to be essentially tapered and recovered.
Pretty well recovered.
Because otherwise it's not useful data. So, make sure that you try to control as many of the variables as you can, while accepting that like you don't have a time machine and you can't go back in time and get hit on by your mom. So, tip number 4, I think, is especially salient for supplements. Try it, stop trying it, maybe try it again. if it's training, give it a real block and then retest it. So I think the on-off test can be a pretty solid way to obtain better data on your own at home. And it can work pretty decently well for a pill or a powder. Maybe take it for a few weeks, quit, see if the effect fades. Restart, see if it returns. That's pretty solid data.
Yeah.
Bonus points if a friend hands you unmarked containers so you genuinely don't know which are will. I've always wanted to double blind. I have done this with CBD and I did not feel an effect. I had a friend do a double blind with me.
Wow.
Which was really great. Thanks, Kimmy. So you can't do this with training, unfortunately, because again, you can't untrain. You can't go back in time and kill Hitler and then make your dad marry someone faster. So what you can do is like give it a real college try. Run the training for the length of time that it needs to understand that different physiological systems improve on different times. So like if you were testing strides and like speed at strides or how unchunky strides feels your metric of success, that's going to get fast in like 2 days. Whereas if you were like, I want to track 100-mile performance,
That might take
it's going to take longer.
years.
VO2 max is going to take a little less long. Threshold takes a little bit longer. Real endurance, real like aerobic durability and what we often call fitness takes a long time. So, again, just try to decouple your feelings from the numbers as best you can and get you a friend that'll do a double blind for you.
I like athletes to keep an honest log or some way of accounting for how they feel throughout the process. That takes into account the highs, lows, and everything in between.
Yeah.
So it's not just something that's a highlight reel, then that the athlete's comparing everything back to.
Mhm.
Well, I felt this great on this run in 1994, and I've been comparing everything to that moment ever since. Like, that's a lot of people operate that way, but it does not give us any meaningful information.
Yeah.
We need to understand all of the feels, the
Yes.
whole spectrum of the feels throughout the process. Though that is all worth looking at individually and within all of its context over time to understand how things are working.
My last tip here is ask compared to what, right? Because better than nothing or it can't hurt is a really bad low bar. Because if your fancy method actually beating consistent, progressive, like all the boring stuff with like, little intensity structured training, like, is it actually outperforming doing nothing in a real way? Is the supplement beating the version that costs a quarter as much or beating just sleeping an extra hour? I struggled with this. I used to subscribe to ketones and I had this thing where like when I was working in TV and I had to drive back and forth from Denver, I would take ketones because I was so nervous I was going to overtrain because I knew I was like way too stressed and unwilling to reduce my training. So I instead started taking ketones and I didn't get hurt. And I didn't get overtrained, but then I started to develop this belief where I was like, what happens if I stop taking the ketones?
Right.
And then eventually my credit card got canceled. So Capital One decided to run this N-of-1 trial for me. Thanks, guys. What's in your wallet? Much more money now that I realized I do not need ketones to train healthfully.
I mean, it's so funny, like again, confirmation bias. What we convince ourselves is true.
Right.
And I really wonder what it was that helped you there. Maybe it was just the
being
amount
cognizant
of
that I was stressed.
Yes, that was
trying to actually take care of myself.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the boring shit.
Yeah.
That usually wins the day.
Right.
And like the sustainable long-term approach, but isn't like super glamorous, doesn't look good on social media, doesn't get you 20,000
right.
followers.
Like if I had made a reel that was like, I tried ketones for 6 months and then stopped because I couldn't tell if they were working, people would be like, you're fucking stupid. Like, what the hell? Like, stepping up to the mic, attention, everyone, this shit didn't work.
I realized all I had to do was take care of myself and I'd be okay.
The real ketones were the friends we made along the way.
Yes. Oh, they're the best friend. Yes, they're the best.
So, I mean, again, that's just my N-of-1. I'm not telling people to stop taking ketones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you that you should think critically about the decisions you make so that Capital One doesn't have to think critically for you.
So, quick self-assessment before we close it out. run your next experiment like a trial.
Yep.
Before you buy or try the next thing, run it through a couple gut checks.
Yeah. Number one, what's the one variable that you're actually testing? And are you holding everything else as steady as possible?
What is a specific repeatable result that would convince you that this worked?
Yep.
Write it down before this ever started.
Because like shrug emoji is not exactly a ringing endorsement. And like,
Totally.
I don't feel worse is not success. I think it's also important to ask, if this were free and took no time at all, would I still believe it worked? Again, because I was spending like $80 on these ketones, I was pretty invested in them working, because telling myself that I was essentially drinking, stuff that you would use to strip like paint off a jet ski is not.
It does taste like so
awful.
bad.
It tastes so. It always makes me remember the scene in The Master where Joaquin Phoenix is like siphoning gasoline out of the Scientology boat to drink, and that is how I feel.
And do you have an outside reference, a log, a coach, a friend who can help you recognize that drinking paint thinner isn't
great for your endurance performance?
And what are we comparing this to? And I think like it's important to recognize, like, is this something that is, beating out boring, or is it actually consistent training and adding is it like the real stuff that makes a difference?
Because like thought experiment, like imagine if you'd never heard about sleep before.
Right.
And someone offered you a powder that did what sleep does. You'd be like, holy fucking shit, I need that magic in me right now.
Right.
You would spend almost any amount of money to get it, but it's not packaged that way, right? Like it's packaged like, boring, lame.
It's boring. Just like
I can't buy it. Yeah, just like consistent training.
Putting in the work for
If there
10
was
years.
a pill that did what consistent training did, we would all be on it yesterday, So like the way that these things get packaged impacts how we experience them a lot more than the actual efficacy of the thing.
Yeah.
But I do think the caveat is that the goal here isn't cynicism about every gel, every gadget, every sodium bicarb. The goal is to have the rigor and the critical thinking so that you can tell the difference between, does this give me a real edge, or am I just making sure that Matt from the feed can get a third lake house?
Yeah. And the issue isn't that we're experimenting and that we're interested in self-experimentation.
Yeah.
It's that often we're doing sloppy experimentation.
Yes.
We're changing way too many things at the same time. We're doing complete overhauls. We're looking at confirmation. We're not looking at confirmation bias in the context of what is actually working and what's not working. And it leads us to make false assumptions about what interventions are truly meaningful and help us get to where we want to go.
Yeah.
So, don't fool yourself.
Because you are the easiest person to fool. Hire a coach.
Yes. All right, guys. We had a great time on this one. As always, reach out to us. We love to hear from you. Microcosmcoaching@gmail.com and microcosm-coaching.com.